5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're listening to Tabletop and Beyond with your host, Justin.
But before we get started, how was your Geek Week?
And co-hosts Dan and Jason.
You have to be willing to let the dice help you tell the story.
Okay, look, this year I'm going to stop mispronouncing words. Join us as we cover board games to war games and beyond.
And welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. This is the Winning WARCRY segment. We're talking about Nighthaunt and battle groups. Guys, how you doing tonight?
Hey, good to be here.
Hey there.
Of course, we got Jason back. Jason, I'm glad to have you not traveling so much.
Yeah, it's been a bit. It's nice to be back on, although I'm leaving again for a little bit. But it's good to be able to make time tonight, so good to be here, guys.
For sure. And then, of course, we got Dan. Always good to have you with us, Dan.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here, especially after tornado sirens were all through my neighborhood yesterday.
Yeah,
I'm
crazy.
just real glad to be here.
Yeah, the alternate is something we don't want to think about, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, we have, like I said, a great show ahead. We're going to talk about the Nighthaunt faction. We're going to talk about battle groups, how to arrange your warband into your hammer, your dagger, your shield, and we're also going to talk about some of the new reveals, which I'm very excited about. Seeing the Warhammer Fest reveals, that was pretty cool. But first, let's talk about what's on your hobby table. Dan, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I just bought a light box. You can get them pretty cheap on Amazon, actually, but just with the hopes of being able to sort of photograph some of my models and stuff a little bit better, maybe put some pictures on my channel, etc. But yeah, I kind of just unpacked it today, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how to use it. It comes with a lot of different kind of backgrounds. You can have the light in the light box be tinted a bunch of different ways and get some kind of weird effects. So yeah, I'm interested to learn how it works, all the finer points.
Is it like the kind of the plastic one with the hole in the top, and you got all the background's kind of hook in the back and stuff like that? Is it that one? It's got like an LED strip like up at the top that you can plug in.
Yeah, so it's got a little not a strip but like a circle of LEDs at the top, and then like a diffuser screen underneath that. And then you can put in, you can slide in walls that are various colors, so you can do it all white or all black.
That's cool.
The all black doesn't stay black. I don't know. I've seen some really fancy pictures on Instagram where the black background is truly black. I'm not sure what they're doing to achieve that, but it still works really well for kind of bouncing the light around, which I think is, the point.
So I got one of those. I don't think mine's as fancy as yours because it doesn't have the diffuser up top, and it just had like LED stuff. The light was way too harsh, and it was coming in really bad. So like I had to almost kind of put like a paper towel, a white paper towel, and then like my painting light over it to like diffuse it.
Oh, sure.
Quite a bit,
Okay.
So I had to play around with it. And even then, I wasn't crazy about it. There's a couple of tutorials out there that I really liked. Miniac had a great one. There was another guy, I'm skipping his name right now. The sauce painting. The sauce painting had another good one about taking pictures. And to get that like infinite black, it was all about adjusting your ISO values on your camera.
Okay. So that's the next step, is getting a real camera.
Well, they all say you can totally do it from your iPhone or Android because the megapixels on them are fantastic now. And you just have to be able to get in and actually fidget with the numbers. And sometimes you just have to flip your camera to pro mode because it's normally default mode, but you can totally do it on your phone. In fact, they tell you how to do it.
All right.
It's kind of cool.
I'll look that up. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to have it.
Yeah, very cool. I dream of the day that I have some space that I can like just get like a permanent picture station and like get it set up right and then not touch it. You know, where just put the model in the middle and be like, okay, let's do that one now. So, you know, one day. Yeah, I love taking pictures. But
Right on.
Dan, yeah, Jason, how was what's on your hobby table right now? What you
I've
working
got
on?
nobblers on my table. It's gonna happen
Ooh.
this time, and I don't know what I'm gonna do to keep them from running away, because I tell you how many times I have assembled and painted nobblers and they just disappear. We've talked about this before, so I'm gonna put some like earth magnets on the bottom of these guys to solve them down. But I'm excited. I'm gonna build that list when we talked about ogres. I'm gonna build me a list to bring to your event that you're running in June.
Very good.
Your
I
WARCRY
need
event,
people
so
to
it'll be
sign-
exciting. Yeah.
I need people to sign up for it.
Yeah,
because-
through Best Coast Pairing, right?
Yep. I
Yep.
think we haven't had anybody sign up for it yet.
Okay.
We're still
you'll
a far enough away. So
Yeah, you'll still have one. And I think there's a lot of people like the local friend group that are there that probably just haven't thought about opening the Best Coast Pairing app probably since COVID.
yeah, definitely.
To be fair,
so,
yeah. I know
yeah.
I'm one of those. Like I've already got it on my calendar. I've got it approved with the wife points, but I have not pulled it up in BCP yet. I just haven't thought about it. You just reminded me, actually.
Yeah, totally. So, and I've had a couple of people reach out to me, random people that I don't know, and say, "Oh, you know, when you say no allies, what does that mean?" You know.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm hoping that we kick it off. Even if we have like 8 people, I think it would be amazing.
How many do you have signed up for Nova Open?
Oh, good question. I meant to check that the other day.
I think it's in the mid-teens.
Yeah, I thought last time I checked it was like 19.
That's gonna be fun.
Maybe actually. Maybe there's 19 tickets left. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have signed up for it. I'm
Yeah,
really excited.
I had been waiting because just with all my work travel, I wasn't sure, but I think now I have full approval to go for it. So you're going to get another ticket bought here pretty soon.
Oh, you
Should be good
hadn't
stuff.
gotten your ticket.
And
Nope.
it's wild, given that it's in August. You know, I think a lot of the signups either happen right at the beginning or right at the end. So the fact that you're already, you know, have enough to run a real tournament, and it's not even 3 months to the
yeah.
event. Yeah, I think pretty exciting.
Right now, we have sold 14 tickets, which I think is great. There's 18 left.
Yeah,
So
that'll be a good amount.
That's
And they'll
sweet.
fill
You're still
up.
4.5 months away.
Yeah, they'll
exactly.
fill up.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, if I get 20, I'll be happy as a clam. You know, and I think if we keep up pace, we'll have more than 20.
For sure.
So we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty good. Well, I hope your nobblers do stay around, Jason, because
Me
you
too.
know they've been.
If not,
hilarious.
there'll be some more croute on the table.
Good times. I have been painting furiously some terrain for this WARCRY event that we're having at Huzzah on June 4th, and I've got like 2 more things I need to do with this corpse rack mausoleum. But I really love the way it came out, like the skulls and like the roses and stuff like on the side of the buildings, and it just really pop out really nice. And I gave some like weathered copper roofs and you know all that stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I ended up picking up a whole bunch of terrain. I'm looking over my shoulder right now. I got the blasted Hallowheart terrain. I got some more defiled Azure ruins or shattered ruins, right? Whatever they are. It's basically like the WARCRY base box minus the head and the bell tower. And I got 6 more trees and another mausoleum. So I got a lot of terrain to paint and put together, but it'll be good because I like and I'll probably do this for our events too. Probably mix and match a little bit. So I might have like a little mausoleum building. I might have a couple of ruins and then a tree in there or something like that. You know, something to really shake it up and and have a good time with.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. I love the terrain you make. I think you always paint it very well. It's gonna be fun for immersion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always really cool when you got painted terrain, you know, and it's funny because I look at it and I'm like, I totally smudged copper painting on the side of this building. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm just moving on. You know, it's like, who's going to notice, right? Like,
Nobody's gonna
while
notice.
you're playing. Yeah. but it just makes me laugh because I'll know it's there, right?
Yes.
I'll know it's there. So anyway, well, it's good, guys. It's funny because we have a friend who is probably coming to the event, who definitely has signed up for a ticket. It's our friend Dan Pomeroy, who's obviously the host of some of our other podcasts, but he just bought the Sisters of Slaughter Warcry box, and he put this together, and I think this was his first experience with Games Workshop models. Don't you think, Jason?
I think it was his first experience putting models together.
Oh, that's brutal. What a rough introduction.
No. I knew it was going in a bad direction when he had like he was putting one model together using the helping hands and
like the little clippy
gorilla glue and
Yeah.
super glue.
Poor guy.
And he's like, I can't get this stuff to take. And we're like, first of
He's
all,
like, it's taking me 6 hours to get 3 arms on. And I'm like, that's not how it should work.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, step 1, let's get you some plastic glue and start there.
But Daughters of Cain are tough. That's the worst assembly I've ever dealt with.
Yeah.
Really?
So he was. Yeah. He had all the things going against him.
It was pretty. But the funny thing is, once we got him the right glue, he finished it in like 4 hours.
Yeah. But he had. I think he still had such a bitter taste in mouth about it. So what we got to do is we got to get it. Now he's been digging painting, so we got to get him painting those quick so he can find the thing he really likes about it, which is painting, and then get it on the table.
Yeah.
So he can put the build behind him.
It was hilarious, and the funny thing is I actually love the build part of the hobby. It's kind of like Lego. I loved Legos as a kid.
Yeah.
And so like following the instructions and putting it together, and like it totally can be frustrating sometimes. Like, trust me, I've put together 12 spirit hosts. And those things are not fun to put together. They are the worst. And so, but I love building them, and I love painting them and stuff like that. So it was funny because I was just like, oh, dude, did you love building them? And he was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. Like, oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, stick with it, buddy. It's going to be yours when you're done. You've made it.
But you know what? He did it, and I don't know if he's started painting them yet. I wouldn't be surprised, but he'll have them painted before we get up to our event for sure. Because he's been flying through with the speed paints, and we have a episode. If you're interested in kind of his review of the Army Painter speed paints, we did a To Paint or Not to Paint Part 2, where he talked about his journey with painting and rediscovering the love of painting through the speed paints, because it just made it so much easier for him. So, yeah. It was really good. It's really good to see him get excited about it. So, yeah, that's really good. Okay, well, let's talk about some news. Dan, we had some pretty big news happen. What was it, last week? It was last week.
Yeah, pretty exciting. Certainly the biggest news we've had in a long time for this game.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was during Warhammer Fest. And they teased us on Friday, I think it was Friday the 6th, that it was going to be like Necromunda, Kill Team, and Warcry were kind of the ones that came out. And I was like, okay, it's I kind of dig Kill Team, but I don't want to talk about that. Show me Warcry. Especially since, like, there have been rumors, Dan, of like the new edition coming out, and I figured if they were going to ever announce it, right, we're in the middle of May, if they're ever going to announce a new edition, like, it would probably be right now.
It would either be now or it's not coming this year, right? That's what you would think.
Yeah, totally.
And instead we got something that kind of halfway in between may or may not be a new edition. I mean, they've never changed the logo before. So for people who don't know, we should probably set the scene, right? So they show this trailer, and it's they stamp a brand new Warcry logo, and it's very like almost caveman-esque, very sort of Paleolithic.
Mm-hmm.
And then they send us to this like primordial mountainous jungles environment with like a giant, I don't know what to call it, like a dinosaur vulture phoenix hybrid. And then we see some comets or some asteroids hit in the distance and create like a big bomb cloud, and that's basically all we get
Right.
until they show
Cool
us models,
trailer, bro.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty exciting. A lot to kind of speculate on there, but yeah, that's kind of the first snippet we got.
So as they got into it, they explained that the Warcry story has been centered in the 8 points, right? Which is sort of like gateway realm that connects all of the other realms. The 8 mortal realms, and like the 8 points is this sort of chaos controlled area. It's where the Varen Spire is. It's where you get Varanite. It's Archaon's domain. And, this is where all of the Warcry war bands are fighting and duking it out. And you've got all of the other Age of Sigmar factions kind of coming in to, get their treasures from the Bloodwind spoils and all of that. So it's very much been centered on that 8 points. The original book was there. The Monsters and Mercenaries took it there a little bit even further. Obviously, in each of the Tome of Champions, we got more narrative quests and fated quests that really expanded the lore of the 8 points. And then Red Harvest, I think, took it to like a fever pitch as well, because it really tied in with the Morathi Broken Realms books, where you had like the Canaanite Shadow Stalkers that are going in and stealing this actual Varanite that Morathi needed to fuel her ascent to godhood. And
Yeah, you mean
you're actually-
Catacombs was...
Oh yeah, Catacombs.
yeah.
Yep,
Mhm.
definitely Catacombs. And then we actually in Red Harvest get to where they're mining the Varanite, right?
Mhm.
And it's just like chaos infused metals that can like give you mutations and extra powers and stuff like that. And so you've got like the amazing terrain that we got with the Red Harvest, where you've got like Varanite derricks that are like pumping it out of the ground, and you got sluices of this metallic stuff, and I mean just gorgeous terrain, amazing war bands, but it's all been focused again on the 8 points, right? This trailer says we're going to take that story now and drop it right into the middle of Gur, the realm of the beasts. And in fact, it's not just Gur, it's in the continent of Thondia, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like within this like little area where you said these comets have hit. Something's happening in this very jungly area of the realm of beasts and monsters.
And it's called the Gnarlwood,
Mm-hmm.
which led a lot of people to think that was the home of the Gnarl Root Glade of Sylvaneth.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought.
checked. Yeah, I checked their. The wiki said that their sort of, at least where their seed pods are, isn't called the Gnarlwood, but I could be wrong as far as like where their other homes are. It definitely it speaks to Sylvaneth to not be related, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And they mentioned that there were going to be, it's too bad, but we'll get to this in a second. They mentioned that there will be warbands that aren't chaos related, and
Right.
some that quote unquote may surprise us. I mean, I guess they have to say that no matter what, but I almost wonder if they'll do a warband that's of a faction that doesn't exist yet, something like that. The way they've done for Underworlds.
They're so they have been, and this might tie in a little bit. They have been teasing and kind of letting the Age of Sigmar fan base, like pine deeply for these the Malarian Shadow Dark Elves that would come from Ulgu, right, or whatever. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Warcry Shadow Elf warband.
Really?
Like
Even
a
though
dark,
they've
like a dark
already
elf.
made a Dark Elf warband?
Which Dark Elf warband is that?
The Canaanite Shadow Stalkers.
So are those dark elves, or are they just like? I mean, I guess they are kind of dark elves, but they're still talking about them being like these shadow elves of Malarian, right? Like the kind of the little brothers to the high elves that we get from the Lumineth Realm Lords, right?
No. They are legitimately like from Ulgu. They serve
Okay,
Morathi, who is the mother of Malarian. So they're not the shadow elf dark elves. They're the whatever Morathi's elves are called. Not the daughters of Cain, but like, her friends essentially. Yeah.
So, if I'm not mistaken, the Canaanite Shadowstalkers are they elves or are they mortals?
They're
Men?
elves. Yep.
Are they?
They're
Okay,
elves.
okay. I stand corrected on that though. So I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting because we I think even last podcast, Dan, we had talked about how cool it would be to start seeing some other war bands that were.
We did.
Like,
it was pretty high on our hopes, right?
yeah, right. Exactly. And they kind of confirmed, yeah, you're gonna get some more that are not like chaos focused. So it'll be interesting.
I'm really hoping we get a Greenskins warband. What were you gonna say, Jason?
I was going to say, I'm trying to figure out what is the deal with, the bovine helmet fetish that seems to be making its way into Games Workshop.
Yeah. Let's move to the Horns of Hashut, because they did show us one of the new warbands, and they're pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, like, when I'm looking through them, I'm like, yeah, I could get behind these guys. They look, like people who are living in the jungle. I'm like, oh, more cow heads. It's just like, I hope they have alternate heads.
It's like the Luminous Realm Lord cowhead guys, right? That I'm like, I don't think I can get behind this army because of these giant cow heads.
But the thing is, I know it's just me because I know there are people who absolutely dig headgear.
The fans cry out for cow heads. I mean, what can we say?
I got
They
a
wouldn't have done
fever,
it twice,
and all I need
right?
is more cow head.
Yeah, just need some more bovine. But I don't know.
Even their clubs have cow heads. This is pretty wild, actually, looking at them.
I mean, I totally get the theme, right? Like, they're supposed to be like, the comet comes down, war moves to this new place. These guys have been probably, living a little rough in this area for a while. It's just what they've evolved to. But it's interesting. Like, they've got, it looks like one of the models has a gun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, it'll be interesting to see what this warband can bring that makes it feel different than maybe some of the other, initial warbands that came out. Just my opinion.
So this warband gives me, I mean, it's a very tribal vibe, right, that it has, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But this warband gives me echoes of, like, the Babylonian Empire. Because, like, they were big worshippers of the bull and stuff like that. And, you've got this kind of armor on it that almost looks like Bronze Age-y. Especially, like, the helmet, like the cow helmets that they have, the bull helmets. And headgear. So, and the plated, like, what is that called? The plated skirt kind of thing, armor that they have, right? That, like, it just feels very, like, Bronze Age, very, very Bronze Age. And so, I mean, I kind of dig it. I do dig this. I think the aesthetic's cool. I hear you about the cow heads, but I still think it's cool.
I think it's cool. I struggle sometimes when I look at these, and I think that there's got to be some really strong lore behind, like, their worship of, like, bronze or something, because if I was going to come to battle in, like, my underwear and a tiny little rain tarp, why would I wear a giant heavy chain around my waist? It's just like, I don't get it. But there's got to be something there important. Like, it's my, it's your vestments or something. I don't know.
Yep.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Now, the Hashut, I saw a lot of a bit of, I don't know if it was, ironic rage out there on the internet, but Hashut is the basically the deity of the Chaos Dwarves. And so people are like, are you kidding me? They're giving us Hashut, but the Chaos Dwarves still aren't here, right?
Oh,
And
man.
so, like, they were so like outraged.
I feel bad for the person who sculpted these because they were met mostly with rage. And like, for those who don't know, the name of this warband was leaked before it was announced, and it wasn't a Games Workshop leak. And so when it was leaked, a bunch of people thought, like, oh my god, we're getting a Chaos Dwarf WARCRY warband. This is going to be incredible. And, all the Chaos Dwarf fans, of which there's a shocking number online.
It's kind of
honestly
ridiculous.
A shocking number of Chaos Dwarf fans. All of them kind of, started clamoring. And I think if these had been if the first look we'd gotten of these had been at Warhammer Fest, and it had just been, here's a warband, look at all this bull motifs. Hey, you know who else is a bull? Like the forgotten 6th chaos god Hashut. Oh, you know, now we've got humans following Hashut. I wonder what other followers of Hashut could come along, you know? And it would have sort of helped build the hype for Chaos Dwarves that they're clearly trying to build. I don't know if it's going to be a 2023 release or a 2024 release, but it's like, you know, they're putting the feelers out there, right? So if that had been how these were released, I think people's hopes wouldn't have been gotten up, and then people would be really excited for this the way, you know, when Hobgrots came out, people were like, oh man, like this is what orcs who have made friends with Chaos Dwarves are like. That's really cool. And people got excited about the Hobgrots, which are, you know, it's shocking for just like a little chaff unit. I think these would have had that same reception if it weren't for that leak, and I feel bad for whoever sculpted these to have their work kind of met with a bunch of grumping when it probably wouldn't have otherwise.
Now, I'll tell you that something that really excites me is that Centaur Marshal. That thing looks awesome. I'm like, I want to build and paint that.
Oh, that thing is amazing. I'm totally getting it. That's and they said on the stream, they're like, yeah, we see a lot of Golden Demon submissions from this guy.
Oh, totally.
You know, and yeah, absolutely.
Now it does say that it can be taken by a host of warbands. So what warbands do you think is it just going to be like what? What do you think will be open? Just the destruction warbands or what?
I would bet everything in Slaves to Darkness, which counts most of the Chaos warbands.
Yeah.
That would be my bet, but I have zero. Other than the one Slaves to Darkness cross that's on the armor, I have no evidence. That's my only piece of evidence pointing me towards that.
So this looks like a chaos. I mean, this is a chaos model to me, right? Like you got the very
skull
chaosy.
Thingy.
Yeah, you got the skull thingy. You've got the kind of the armor.
Well, they do
the
have
star,
the Slaves
right?
to Darkness cross. Yeah, so.
Exactly. And you've got the like very very chaos horns coming out the top, right? Like, I know this is like a centaur, but like those are very chaosy horns, not bull horns necessarily, you know. And so I see it as like an Ogoroid Myrmidon type of model where it can be taken as an ally, you know, in your army. It's probably going to cost you like 300 something points, but it's going to be super beefy. And I think that it's got 4 arms here, 3 of which have weapons, right? You got a spear, you have an axe, you have a club, and then you have a 4th arm that has a net. So
throw away all the other arms. That 4th arm with the net is the one that matters.
I totally agree, right?
Yeah.
Like that's gonna be an awesome ability that he's gonna have that's like on a double or something like that. That's gonna prevent a unit from activating or moving or something like that, and then it will literally beat it to death with the other 3 arms.
What do you think its movement's going to be? Do you think it's going to be like an 8?
Ooh,
I would
like
guess
12.
8. I would
Really?
guess
8?
Yeah, because most of the other like the other centaurs in the game, they move 8. So I just assume all centaurs move 8. But you know, I could be wrong. It could move, like I could see it moving 6 because it's bigger than the other centaurs, but I'd be pretty surprised if it was that much slower than the other centaurs.
I was thinking it's higher end, like maybe 10.
Oh,
But
it
10, the only
could,
time
I
we
mean,
see 10, the only time we see 10 though are flyers, really.
Yeah.
Well, some cavalry have 10. Like I think Varengard have 10, which is shocking
Yeah.
to me with how much armor they have. So
Right.
you're right. It could be 10. Yeah, I would bet 8, but it could absolutely be 10.
It'd be interesting.
Yep, be interesting.
Do you think it will have Do you think that it will have a missile weapon, like maybe could throw that spear on a profile?
I don't know. I mean, at that point, you could speculate anything. Who knows?
Yeah, I know.
I have lots of baseless speculating about like list building changes too. You know, because we're going to Gur, and so maybe there will be some more like monster integration, and so, you know, having this monstrous guy come in for chaos is going to be more important to give them more options. Who knows? I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there.
I mean, I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking he's going to have a move of 8. He's going to have maybe maybe that net will be special. So maybe he'll have four different options to hit with. And and he's gonna be at least from his size, he looks like he's gonna be beefy. Like, this dude is gonna be able to run around the map and just smash objectives.
Yeah, I assume that too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He's I hope he looks like he's going to be expensive point-wise. He looks like he's going to be expensive dollar-wise for the model, but
Yeah.
I'm also expensive point-wise because I think if you put too much, and this is me hypothesizing just looking at him, if you put too much around this guy, you're going to be able to just hold the fort while he runs around and clears out all the other places in the map.
And he could potentially, with that net plus the his beefiness, he could potentially do stuff like run up into a crowd, take out one of the smaller guys while throwing the net over the big guy, so that like if you have a storm fiend and a bunch of plague monks, right? You think your plague monks can't be touched because your storm fiend is there. Well, guess what? This guy comes in, throws a net over your storm fiend, kills a plague monk, and now like all your plans are ruined. We could see something like that.
Totally.
Yeah. I wonder if they do something like, you have to, you can't use the net if you do the other things. I don't know.
Could
know.
be.
I have a feeling, just like with the netters. I mean, it's like the Gloomspite get netters. Like, it's an ability that they can use.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So.
Like, maybe it'll be a
like a double or
triple
triple
or a double. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things they did mention in the stream that I thought was interesting is somebody asked if like this came with like new rules, aka is this going to be a new edition, right? And they're like, potentially, we'll find out, right? Like
they're very cagey. Yeah, you're right.
Super cagey.
Well,
about
it depends on how the next revenue numbers look. If we need to put another book out there, or wait, no.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly going to be coming out in a new box set, right? There's going to be 2 factions that are going to be there, and you're going to get new terrain and all that kind of stuff. So the question is, I mean, Dan, do you think that this is going to be a new edition? What do you think?
So one of my commenters actually on my channel had a better theory than I did, so I've just copied it. So basically, what they were saying was, if you look at, we've got these 2 models, right? Kill Team and Necromunda for these 40K skirmish games that have gotten new editions recently. And there's the Kill Team option, which is just like you say the previous game was broken and we're invalidating all of it to just make a new game with the same name. Or what Necromunda did, I mean, Necromunda Ash Wastes basically is a new edition of Necromunda, but it, as far as I know, it explicitly doesn't obsolete the old game, right? Like, all the rules are essentially the same. It's just like a totally different setting and a totally different way to play the game. So almost like Super Catacombs, right? Like Catacombs is a new, different setting, but you still just play the base game. It's kind of this separate other thing on the side. I'm hoping that this is essentially like WARCRY Ash Wastes, where, now we are in Gur, but most of what you learned from WARCRY Bloodwind Spoil still applies. And, there's just these new rules that kind of change up, what is good in what situation a little bit, but for the most part, we're still playing a pretty similar game. That's my hope, Yeah,
I mean, then, for those that don't really follow Necromunda, right, the Ash Waste added, vehicles, and it's a very different setting, and so, there's obviously, a lot of new rules that were associated with that. So, yeah, we could totally see some, maybe we'll see some terrain rules.
Yeah.
That,
the
that
point
we kind of
being,
had some with Red Harvest.
Yeah, the point just being, you can still play your Necromunda Underhive bands in Ash Wastes. Yep. They're just not designed with Ash Wastes in mind. So, kind of give or take there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, we will find out. When do you think they're going to drop this box set on us that they're going to be coming out with?
Man, no idea. I mean, how long do you think they're going to take on the Horus Heresy hype cycle, right? I mean, they won't do this until that's all done, right?
I feel like, and you have to realize, too, that we're about to get into the Age of Sigmar turnover stuff with the new General's Handbook, that will be coming out in about a month, right? And so they're gonna hype up that stuff. They're gonna have, some other box sets come out this summer as well. I think, in my opinion, they're going to reveal the box set at the Nova Open. So that'll be the 1st of September. It'll go on sale like end of September, early October-ish. And that tends to follow what previous Warcry releases have been, right? They've been like early fall, early to mid fall, before the holidays.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then it'll either be their Gen Con reveal or their no. Oh, but Gen Con's usually their like board game stuff, like their Barnes and Noble exclusives. So yeah, Nova makes a lot of sense. And that would be cool because that would make your tournament at Nova Open kind of the send off celebration for Warcry 1.0. I mean, that would make it pretty special.
Yeah, although I would argue that with like Catacombs and Red Harvest, we're in like Warcry 1.7.
Yeah.
Or something like that right now, right? Like
yeah.
We've got a couple of stuff, but we're still in the first edition totally. So, anyway. But yeah, a lot of good news. The only other tidbit of news that I wanted to kind of throw out there is that it was announced in the last White Dwarf that 4 fighters, we get 4 cards for Warcry cards for 4 new fighters. Unfortunately, the White Dwarf didn't drop before we recorded this podcast. Dan, who do you think those 4 fighters are going to be? I've got my thoughts.
So we're going to get the Nighthaunt and Daughters of Cain heroes, right?
Yep. But which here? So you got the Gladiatrix, which is the Daughters of Cain one, right?
The Gladiatrix, which I think is a competitive painter's dream of a model. Right. I think we're going to see so many of those at Capital Palette, at Nova, and at Golden Demon. And then the Nighthaunt Scriptor.
Scriptor Mortis.
Book Ghost, yeah. And then I assume the other 2 are Crossbows and the Crossbow Leader, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think definitely the Crossbows. That name cracks me up, right? The Ghost Crossboys, we call them Crossbows. Definitely them, and I couldn't think of another one, like other than like the Crossbow Leader. But I think definitely the Gladiatrix, the Scriptor Mortis, and the Crossbows. Like those 3, I'm like, those are definites. Those are locks in my mind.
Yeah.
So it would make sense to have the Crossbow Leader as well.
The other possibility is they do it like Bone Splitters has, where the crossbow banner carrier has different rules, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, that's like most of our news there. It's always great to have Warcry news. Unfortunately, it doesn't come out as often as some of the other, bigger games like Age of Sigmar. But when we do get it, we soak it up, and we tend to overanalyze probably of what it's really going to mean for us. But I'm excited for it for sure.
Well, we get to steal their news too. I mean, those Nighthaunt models are ours. The Sylvaneth stuff that came out is eventually going to be ours, right? I'm really interested to see what those archers end up like. I know it'll be a couple months before we see it, but it should be cool. And then they teased a resurrection ability for the Bug Riders, so if those get into Warcry, that could be pretty cool. But
that'd be very cool.
Gonna be a ways away, but when it happens, we'll cover it.
I feel like Sylvaneth, because they like completely not completely revamping the line, but adding so many models, that I wouldn't be surprised to see a new rule set for Sylvaneth, like in a Tome of Champions or something, right? Like all new cards, basically, to add to them. Or we could just get it in White Dwarf and call it a day,
possible.
Right? So, yeah. Anyway, well, let's talk about Nighthaunt now. Nighthaunt is the first faction that I played with in Warcry. Of course, I was busy painting up the Iron Golems and the Untamed Beasts, but because I had painted Nighthaunt already, I just got a packet of cards. Jason, you were playing with Flesh Eater Courts with a packet of cards, and that is how we learned Warcry, which was Flesh Eater's Courts versus Nighthaunt. And let me tell you how often I won. Do you want to guess, Dan?
In 10 games, I think you won 2 of them.
probably only one.
Oh.
Yeah.
We had good times though, but I had to get really crafty with the Nighthaunt to be able to win, especially when he was fielding the Crypt Flayers.
Yeah, the Crypt Flayers were just crazy how far they can move on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And then just wreck things.
And then they hit real hard still, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rough when Nighthaunt's strength is supposed to be their movement, and you're moving faster than them anyway. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The interesting thing is when Nighthaunt first came out, the model range was so limited with them, right? Your choice of leader, you had two choices of leader. It was the Dread Warden and the Extoller Shaiish, which is like the kind of sergeant model of the Grimghast Reapers.
Is that the one with the bell?
Yes, the one with the bell, exactly. And then you had Chain Rasps, I don't even think you had a Guardian Assault. You didn't have a Guardian. You had Chain Rasps, Mirrorborn Banshees, a Karen Wraith, and Glaive Wraith Stalkers. Like, I think that was all that you had. And, like, they were all, terrible. I mean, they just weren't good. They just did not have a lot of oomph to them, right? They didn't do a lot of damage. And, again, going against the Iron Golems, hey, Nighthaunt was just fine against Iron Golems and even, like, Untamed Beasts. But if you took them against anything else, like, they just they weren't that great. So I was really excited when the Tome of Champions came out and really expanded their offerings, and you really got to lean into a lot more of the line. So as is our custom, let's start talking about Nighthaunt. Maybe we can start with their strategy. Like, what are they good at? What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses?
I have one strength and a few weaknesses.
Okay.
In my opinion, their resurrect ability is one of the very best abilities in the entire game. Soulblight has a much weakened version of Nighthaunt's resurrect ability.
Yeah.
And Soulblight, competitively is like right there at the top, because turns out when you have like solid models and that resurrect ability, you're one of the most terrifying factions in the game, right?
Right.
Yes. So, it's possible that Nighthaunt are paying points for the fact that you can resurrect all of them, not just, a few specific ones. It's possible that that's part of why they're pointed so kind of cautiously. But that ability is incredible, and there are certain missions where you can leverage that ability to win the game. Man, I can't think of any other strengths, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, look, their spectral summon, their spectral summon is a triple, right? And, yeah, I mean, Legion of Nagash is, like, their summon ability is similar, right? The Necromancer, and same thing in the Soul Blight. I think they're all triples, and I think that you all remove a number of damage points allocated to the fighter equal to the value of the ability. So, I don't know if Nighthaunt's is that much better.
But you can get anything, right? So you can resurrect your other leaders.
It's a friendly fighter, yeah.
Yeah,
because the Soul Blight it has to have the minion keyword.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I would like to say that it used to be Nighthaunt used to be that it was the minion keyword. In the original abilities.
Oh, and they took that off there.
Yes, they did.
Nice.
Yep. And that's why I was thinking it, because I missed the friendly fighter and not minion, because they had that before. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, the universal ability that they have is picking an enemy fighter within a number of inches of this fighter equal to the value of this ability, right? So already you're like, okay, if I get a 2, I mean, it's on a double, so you could make a good one. So it could be like anywhere between like 1 and 6 inches, right? Until the end of the battle round, subtract 1 from the strength characteristic, which, I mean, maybe.
No, thank you.
But it's just one fighter though. Like, it's not even an aura, right? Which is hilarious.
Yeah, if that were an
because
aura
the
on
title,
a double, that'd be playable.
I know, that's true. Hilariously, this is titled Aura of Dread.
That's so confusing. Wow, I'm reading it now. That is very confusing. Okay.
So yeah. I'll tell you one thing that they do have going for them. They have the fly keyword, and that can help quite a bit if you've got a lot of terrain going on for you.
That was going to be my statement too, because when I play Sigmar or Warcry, I use movement as the number one tool or tactic for me versus just go in and smash, which has been a little bit different when I play with the ogres. But I think having I think they can move. I would say at average or above average distance than most of the warbands, and they fly. And I think a good player is going to be able to capitalize on that movement and the ability to fly. Where it gets tough is when you have, missions where you just have to camp objectives, because they're, like you said, they're squishy. And even if you get to those objectives and sit quick, there's a chance you're going to get in and just get smashed off of them. So it's going to be hard to hold it, except for those spirit hosts, right? I think those spirit hosts are tar pits if you use them properly. They were tar pits in Age of Sigmar, and I think they're tar pits in Warcry too.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 30 wounds at a toughness of 5, right? So they're, if the average is a strength 4, for example, they're going to be making fighters hit on a 5 or a 6, and they can take the wounds. And then they can be summoned back.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, how much do they cost? Spirit Host?
220
210.
points. Oh, 210 now. Yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the old book.
One other strength I suppose I would give them is 2 of their leaders, and we'll get to these in the leader section, but 2 of their leaders are like big league, serious fighters that maybe not any, but most warbands in the game would love to have as a leader. That you could absolutely, if they had stronger minions, you could build a really strong warband around. The Dreadblade Harrow and the Knight of Shrouds on Steed.
Yeah.
The fact that they're moving 10 inches, pretty tough to kill, right? Deal not good, but respectable damage. Basically these giant flying, hard to kill things. Those are pretty good in the game.
What's amazing about those 2 as well is that they are mounted fighters, but they don't have the mounted keyword. They have the fly keyword. So those things can get up on terrain, whereas your normal mounted unit cannot. They cannot climb. They cannot go through, tunnels and gates and all that stuff. But these guys can absolutely do all of that. So, and what I love about the Knight of Shrouds we'll talk about him in a minute, actually. When we
or let's just jump into leaders right now. Let's jump into
okay.
leaders and start with the Knight of Shrouds. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do like with him, he has a really, really great ability. Because, again, he's got 30 wounds, toughness 5, right? So he's kind of on par in terms of being tanky as the Spirit Host. Except he puts out damage a little bit better, base damage anyway. But he's got a double ability that is just fantastic. At the end of this fighter's activation, heal a number of damage points allocated to this fighter equal to the number of damage points allocated to enemy fighters as activation. So if he puts a wallop on people, which he can, he's got 4 attacks at strength 4, base damage of 2, crit damage of 4, right? So he gets a little bit of damage. But what would the average of that be? Like maybe 10? He could do 10 per turn?
Yeah. If he's
attacking
right? Twice. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's say he does 10 per turn. I mean, he gets to heal that at the end of the activation, right? So that's a guy, Jason, that you can put on an objective and let him camp, and he'll take it, probably for the whole battle.
Yeah. What did you say his wounds were?
30.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
My worry is, if I see that and I'm the opponent, I'm just not going to fight him, and I'm going to put people on the objective, but not within an inch of him.
Yeah.
But he's got that big base, right? I mean, isn't his base pretty big? So if as long as you get to the objective first, you can kind of body block and force people to come up within an inch of you just to be on the objective. If you take up the whole thing, and if you manage to do that, you're probably in a pretty good spot.
So his kryptonite is going to be shooting attacks, right? Like, imagine a lead belcher just ripping into him. he can't heal back because there's nothing that he's fighting against, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's his kryptonite a little bit. But look, he can get where he needs to go, and he can sit on an objective. He can, if there's little minion guys around, he's just healing himself up like crazy. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, and I would even say for most shooters, they would think of people like the Knight of Shrouds as their kryptonite, right? Because he's got that 10-inch flying. He can probably close the distance in one move and start attacking them right away, and then they can't use their shooting attack, and all of a sudden they're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that gives you a tactic, though. If you got a Knight of Shroud camping an objective, just move your shooters around him and blast into him to try to kite him off of it.
Yeah. I would actually not suggest using it almost ever in Warcry. I would not suggest using your biggest fighters to play the objective game. I would say, your giant, flying, scary, terrifying hero should play the opposing warband while while the rest of your warband plays the objective game, because of exactly what you just said, Jason. Like,
yep.
If he's sitting on an objective,
he's not in the fight.
He's not in the fight, and the opponent can be outmaneuvering him. Whereas if he's out in, hunting people, he's pretty scary.
Yep, that's a good advice for probably most war bands, right? And you've seen that. I said that a lot. When I first started playing FEC back in Age of Sigmar days, that Terrorgeist. I noticed every time I started playing the game early on, before I was good at movement and stuff, people were targeting my Terrorgeist right out the door, and they were just firing that guy off the table because they were so scared of him. Then I started to play him so defensively. I kept him way in the back, and then I'd have all these matches where he never really got in, even though he moved 12 or whatever it was inches. He never got into the fray because I was so defensively playing with him. I finally had some really good players tell me once, they were like, look, I know you're afraid of losing him, but you need to be more aggressive with this guy because he is your damage dealer. He's what you got to get into the fray. I think it's really good advice for all these war games. You can't be afraid to get your heavy hitters out there. That's their job. Their job is to go out there and to put fear into your opponent so that they may blow him off the table, but they had to respond to him. Whereas if he just sits in the back, they can ignore him, right? And then they've got more play
That's a
on
good point. Yeah, you're dictating the terms there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, you said your second favorite leader was the Dreadblade Hero. Why is that?
Yeah, so I don't think it's as good as the Knight of Shrouds, but if you're just right on the margins, cutting for points, it does a little bit less damage. It has 2 fewer wounds, but it still does the 10-inch flying, respectable damage. I mean, not respectable damage to anything with toughness 5 or more, but against toughness 4 or toughness 3, it's pretty respectable damage. And just a little bit cheaper, right? 235 points over 250. So if you're trying to do something else with your warband, if you're trying to do spirit host tricks, something like that, sometimes if you use Dreadblade heroes as your leaders, you can just fit in a few more points to do other stuff, and I think that's pretty solid.
His ability is pretty awesome too.
Is this the teleport guy?
Yeah. So, I mean, I played him a lot in Age of Sigmar, and man, he gave me all sorts of movement shenanigans. That was my only way of being competitive with Nighthaunt in Age of Sigmar, right? But I think that he's got movement shenanigans here as well. On a triple, he has Phantasmal Discorporation. Fighter can use this ability if they're not within 3 inches of enemy fighters. Remove this fighter from the battlefield and set them up anywhere on the battlefield floor more than 5 inches away from any enemy fighters.
And teleports are even better in Warcry than they are in Age of Sigmar, because in AOS you can't move after you teleport, but in Warcry, right, the Dreadblade Hero moves 10 inches and can't be within 5 of someone when it teleports, so that means just one movement and it's right in there. So you can literally threaten the entire board with the Dreadblade Hero.
So, and this is if you've got those assassination missions, this guy's amazing, right?
I bet. Yeah.
Because your guy might be, the enemy might be sort of tanked up and sort of the whole they've got a ring of fighters protecting them from everybody that's in front of them. The Dreadblade Hero can go bloop right behind them, and even if there's not enough room like right behind them, they could go bloop to the side of them 5 inches away and then get right behind them, you know, with their movement. So he's the kind of guy that you're like, if I need to go kill somebody, like send him on a hunting mission, because he can get where he needs to be and still like move and attack that turn.
Yeah, that's
So-
pretty flexible. That's nice.
All right, so what units, what leaders don't you like in here?
I'll
The
cede
rest?
to you. I mean, you've played it the most, right? What was the most
Yeah.
frustrating leader for you to use?
I hated the Extoller of Shaiish. I think he's such a garbage unit. He is so bad. I mean, like, he's got the 2-inch thing, but he's got 3 attacks at, like, strength 3, so he was always hitting on, like, 5s and 6s. And yet, he does, like, 4 critical damage, but, man, I just never could get him into where he needed to be. And he didn't even have, like, the Reap Like Corn ability, because he doesn't have a scythe, you know? Instead, yeah, so instead, he has nothing. He literally does not have an ability other than the Spectral Summon that is your normal Nighthaunt leader, right? So I thought he was garbage. I didn't like him at all. The Dread Warden, I mean, he was a cheap leader back in the day when I was using him, you know, before like the Bringers of Death book came out and expanded the line. I still wouldn't take a Dread Warden today, because he's not that much better than just a normal Chain Rasp at almost like double the points.
Yeah.
So, like, he's just really not that much better. I'd rather have 2 Chain Rasps than 1 Dread Warden, because you get, like, you know, double the attacks instead of the same amount of attacks. So your damage output from 2 Chain Rasps is going to be better than the 1 Dread Warden, you know. Of course, you lose the summon ability, but okay, like, whatever, you know. I don't know. He just doesn't. There's nothing to write home about him. So
One that I'm interested in, I don't think I would run it because I like the 2 10-inch move ones better, but the Slasher Crone is kind of interesting just because it's got 5 attacks, which is you know, pretty serious as far as clearing out anything with toughness, because it's only got strength 3, right, and 2 and 4, so it's not really crit fishing either that hugely. But you know, against anything toughness 3, I would trust the Slasher Crone to take it out.
she's got an interesting thing, and this is the Slasher Crone, the Dread Scythe Harridan, and I'm just seeing and the Dread Scythe Harridan, which I'm surprised that the Mirrorborn Banshee doesn't have this. Like, it doesn't make sense. This is the Harrowing Shriek ability, where, like, they're screaming. So why does the Mirrorborn Banshee not have that? It blows my mind. Anyway, pick an enemy fighter within the number of inches of this fighter equal to the value of this ability dice, right, or this ability. All right, so, like, depending on, you know, how many inches. On a 3+, or then you roll a dice for that fighter. On a 3+, until the end of the battle round, that fighter cannot make move actions or disengage actions. So it can be, and I put an emphasis on can, right? This can be a really interesting ability if everything aligns. And that's kind of the problem with that ability, right? Is that, first off, you got to have the range on the ability to be able to do it. It costs a triple, so it's not the easiest to get. It's not as easy as a double, right, to dictate, like, the value of the ability you're going to get, because you can always turn 1 6 into a double, right? 6.
And it's a little frustrating, right, because a lot of factions do get this ability for a double.
Exactly. And so this is a triple, and then you have to roll a 3 up to actually make it go off. So you've got a 67% chance of it doing it if you get a triple already. And so, I mean, would I use it if I was desperate? Yeah, you know, yeah, I would. But am I going to build a list around it? I don't think so.
And there's so many times when Spectral Summon is the triple you'd rather use anyway, and then, you know, I mean, that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about you, Jason? Are there any leaders that stand out to you, good or bad?
So I was sitting here thinking about the Slasher Crone. What is the damage the Slasher Crone does?
Base 2, crit 4.
Base 2 crit 4. That's not bad if you're going to... And how expensive are they?
They're 200 points even. So 5 attacks, 2s
Yeah.
and 4s. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the strength 3 is what worries me. I think, if... otherwise, you're going to be sending your leader off against kind of weak people on the battlefield to really take advantage of those numbers of attacks. That's kind of the thing that was worrying me a little bit about that, because otherwise, if you're going against anything that's a 4, a toughness 4 or above, and there's a lot of toughness 4. You're going to be, of those 5 attacks, maybe 2 are going to get through.
Yeah, and with only 20 wounds, it can be tough too. I mean, the Slasher Crone, like a lot of bespoke warband leaders, are toughness 4 with, strength 5. Like they just have profiles at a very similar points cost that would advantage them against the Slasher Crone in a brawl. So you really are, like you said, looking to hunt down the weaker fighters with the Crone as opposed to go up against the other team's leader.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not. The thing is I've played against, Nighthaunt. I've not played Nighthaunt. I've played Soulblight, but not played Nighthaunt. So, are there leaders I prefer? I don't know if I prefer leaders yet. I think looking just at the stats, I would probably lean towards, the points for the Knight of Shroud on Ethereal Steed, or just the Knight of Shrouds, just because of the things we talked about, their ability to withstand and get out there. There's a lot of these leaders I'd look at and think, no, I'll pass on those. But, I think there are a lot of options for leaders, so if you wanted to, play around, you've got some ability to do so. But probably the Knight of Shrouds is where I would start from if I wanted to make sure my leader could last on the battlefield and be something that people would fear.
Yeah. So I think all of the sergeants, right, and I say sergeants, right, which are like the leaders coming from the other units. So this is the Extoller, Shaiish, Dread Warden, Slasher Crone, Hellwraith. Hellwraith is the Hex Wraith leader. I would rather take their normal unit and maybe 2 of the normal units for the same price, as sometimes that's how it works out, than just the one leader. Like, I don't think that they add that much value in Nighthaunt to it. And that's true of a lot of factions, right? Like the sergeants that come out, they're just a little bit better, and it's like if you've got a little bit extra points. Like, for example, if I wanted to take a Dreadscythe Harridan and I had like an extra 60 points or something like that, why not upgrade her to the Crone if you don't have another leader already? But of course you can only have 2 leaders, so that kind of limits you. So anyway, my point is that the sergeants, they're nothing to write home about, in my opinion. There's a bunch of leaders that I'm going to call traps because they look cool, but I don't think that they actually work out very well. And that is the Guardian of Souls, the Spirit Torment, the Lord Executioner, the Tomb Banshee, and the Cairn Wraith. I think all of those are traps.
Man, that's half the roster.
That's a lot.
I know, but don't you think that? Like, don't you think that?
I agree. Yep, I agree.
I mean, because like, look at this: Guardian of Souls, 2 attacks; Spirit of Torment, 2 attacks; Lord Executioner, 2 attacks; Tomb Banshee, 2 attacks; Cairn Wraith, 3 attacks. And I know that it's not always like it's not always like just about the attacks. I think the Necromancer in the Soulblight Grave Lords is a great example of like not great attacks, but
awful
boys.
fighting stats, but its ability is so good. That's what you're taking it for.
Yeah, and it's got like access to 3 abilities that are pretty good, right?
Right.
So you're bringing it for that, right? You're not bringing it for its fightiness. Well, these guys you're bringing for their fightiness because their abilities aren't that great either, right? And they can be super swingy with only 2 attacks, especially like Guardian of Souls is 2 attacks, 3 toughness, right? Spirit Torment's at least, strength. Spirit Torment at least has 5 strength, and same with Lord Executioner. And the Lord Executioner does have an ability that lets you add damage to the hits and critical hits. Oh no, it's only critical hits. Oh, that's even worse. Yeah, because it's like a beheading. It's like a beheading strike, right? And it says add half the value of this ability rounding up to the damage points allocated by critical hits. Okay, well, you only get 2 dice. Like, what's the chances that you're going to roll a 6 with just 2 dice, you know? So it's like you just wasted a double, and
you're better off. I think that's one of the many doubles that actually maths out to being worse than Onslaught.
Yeah, right.
So you're better off just using the basic Onslaught anyway.
Yeah, so again, they're traps. I do like the Tomb Banshee's Chilling Touch ability, but you can get the Chilling Touch ability on the Spirit Host and the Hex Wraith. So if you want the Chilling Touch ability, I wouldn't get it from the Banshee. I'd just bring a Spirit Host, because the Chilling Touch, it's a Frightful Touch. It's until the end of this fighter's activation, count each hit from attack actions made by them as a critical hit instead. Now that's pretty good, right? Like if a hit goes through, and Jason, you've been on the receiving side of this with the Spirit Hosts.
Oh yeah.
Where all of a sudden, like, I just did 20 damage. You know?
Yeah, I think but I'm with you. I feel like if you really want that ability, just take it in your Spirit Host.
Yeah, because the Spirit Host has 6 attacks, so you're fishing for hits and critical hits with that right there. The Tomb Banshee has 2 attacks at strength 3. Like, good luck even hitting, right? Like, it's not even worth a triple to maybe get a critical hit on a normal hit that you would have had. So, I love the Tomb Banshee so much, and in fact, I joke with my daughter that she is our Tomb Banshee because she has red hair and screams a lot. And so she's like, "That's my model, Dad." I'm like, "That's you, baby," you know. And so I want to play with the Tomb Banshee. I want to play with it in Age of Sigmar, and I want to play with it on WARCRY, and I can't because she sucks in both.
Oh,
like,
no.
I know, it sucks.
Well, you could have her proxy as a Briar Queen. The Briar Queen has pretty bad... This is the Underworld's leader. Has pretty bad fighting stats, but has kind of an interesting leader ability where you pick an enemy fighter within 9 inches and roll dice equal to the number of the ability. It's a triple, so, you know, already you're kind of losing some flexibility there, which is too bad. But for each 4-up, you deal 3 points of damage, and you subtract 1 from their movement.
Oh yeah, that's good.
So that's pretty good, I think. I don't think I would rank the Briar Queen up there with the Knight of Shrouds, you know, if I was picking my most competitive leader, but I think it's playable enough to at least be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So let's get into the troops or the normal fighters here.
Yep.
In my opinion, there's only one chaff unit, one real chaff unit, and I'm defining chaff unit as like a unit that's under 100 points, right? Usually about 8 wounds, something like that. Do you see any other chaff units other than the Chain Rasp?
Nope, there's just the Briar Queen Chain Rasp where you
right.
can pay 10 points to get 1 more damage on crits, but that's all you get for it.
Yeah. And I would add those in if, like, I'm at, like, 980 points, right? So just swap out my Chain Rasp.
Only if I had extra.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't go out of my way to put those in there. But the Chain Rasp, I mean, he does what he does. Like, he's equivalent to, like, a skeleton or something like that. He's got 8 wounds. He does have toughness 4, which is kind of rare for a chaff unit. Normally they're toughness 3. But I think this is their ethereal playing into it, you know, a little bit.
Yep.
So he does have toughness 4, 8 wounds. He's got 3 attacks, strength 3, 1 base damage, 2 on the crit damage. So it's hard to do with death by 1,000 cuts. But I'll tell you where Chain Rasps win the battles is when there's like it's a body objective, right? How many units do you have in each quadrant, something like that. So you can put out a lot of Chain Rasps if you want to. They just
and you can get them where they need to go, right? Because 5-inch move with flying, you know, Jason was saying this before, but that can be a thing that's kind of annoying to deal with on the other side.
They can definitely be speed bumps too. I mean, you know, like to be able to just trip up a big model, right? Like you're a beefy guy, like having just going in and just putting him next to that guy, so he's got to either fight him for one of his turns or disengage and then move or whatever, you know. So being speed bumps, like this is good points wise for speed bump stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I think it's important when you have flyers to play the terrain because, you know, that edge boundary between raised and unraised is a free 3-inch movement for if you're chasing somebody or if somebody's chasing you. You know, that's important to keep in mind with these guys. It can be really detrimental to your opponent if, you know, depending on whether they're going after you or you're going after them. But I mean, I guess if they're running away from you, they're just going to take the fall damage. But I think that the 5 movement and the fly is just really good, especially if you get abilities that are going to give your guys, you know, at the double or just other opportunities to move. You can really clear that battlefield quickly. So I think, and Justin, I think this is, you know, I've seen you play your Nighthaunt like this. You got to play their movement because these guys can really get around the board, and you can't just camp, and you can't not be aggressive with them because otherwise you'll lose the field.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. One of the next unit I want to talk about should be a chaff unit, but for some reason GW likes to screw up this guy's stats to make them absolutely unplayable, both on Age of Sigmar and in WARCRY, and it's the Glaive Wraith Stalker. Like,
But tell us how you really feel.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you, like, their war scrolls, even in the new book that leaked for the Nighthaunt, they're still garbage. Like, there's no way anybody's playing them. Like, they're just, I'm like, why did you even make these models? Like, you have ruled them out of any kind of competitive play whatsoever. And I think it's the same here. They're, correct me if I'm wrong, 40 points more than the Chain Rasp. And they're down to 110
actually.
Okay, so they're 30 points now?
Yep. I still don't think that's good enough, but yeah, they're down to 110.
They're 30 points. This is what you get for 30 points. You ready? You get 2 extra wounds, a point of toughness, and 1 extra damage on your crit. Oh, and you do get a 2-inch melee, right? Which does kind of help. I still don't think it's 30 points. These guys should be like 100 maybe like 90. I'd actually just put them at 90. They're really not that good.
That 2-inch range, I've put this rant on my channel a few times, but 2-inch range on fighters that have like really solid damage is incredible because you attack them, they're threatened, they have to waste a thing to come back at you, and then, you know, you get huge economy from that. 2-inch range on something that doesn't do a lot of damage is actually a disadvantage because it tempts you to not tie them up, right? It tempts you to use the 2-inch range when that's the wrong thing to do because they'll just ignore you, right? If they don't care about you, they'll just ignore your fighter because you're not doing them any damage, so they're not worried, right? So they don't need to clear you out. So the 2-inch range actually just, it tempts you to do the wrong thing, which is not tie them up in base-to-base combat. And so 2-inch range is actually a bit of a liability on fighters that don't have really solid damage potential.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Because it's like, thanks for not tying me up. Now I get to go double move instead of having to disengage and then move.
Right.
Or move and then attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, thanks for not tying me up. And, yeah, thanks, you did me 1 damage. Cool.
Yeah, I can go attack the thing I actually have to kill now.
Yeah, right? Oh, man, that's a really good point. All right, so there are 3 fighters that all kind of fall within the, like, I'm looking at the old book right now, but they're in the old book. They're listed at 135 and 145. Actually, there's 4 fighters. These are kind of your mid-tier guys. It's the Grimghast Reaper, the Bladegeist Revenant, the Mirrormorn Banshee, and the Dreadscythe Harridan.
Yep.
The only difference between the Grimghast Reaper, the Bladegeist Revenant, and the Mirrormorn Banshee is where you're swapping some of your numbers around. So, for example, the Grimghast Reaper's got a 2-inch melee, but a strength of 3, versus the Bladegeist Revenant that's got a 1-inch melee, but a strength of 4, versus the Mirrormorn Banshee that's got a 1-inch melee, a strength of 4, but it has 1 extra base damage, right? That it does 2 instead of 1. So they're all very comparable.
So
their movement and toughness are all the same. The wounds are all the same. That kind of thing.
the Mirmorn Banshee took a pretty nice little buff in the Tome of Champions.
Oh, good.
Actually.
Okay.
And so now it's only 130 points.
Oh, okay. That
which
does
is,
make it better. And she doesn't have an
yeah.
ability.
Okay, maybe that's why they buffed it more than they buffed the others. Because all of them took some very small points buffs, but
Yeah.
the Banshee took the biggest one, maybe because it doesn't have an ability.
Yeah,
But,
she just has the aura of dread that's not really an aura.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because that Strength 4 with, was it a 2-4 damage profile?
Mm-hmm.
It means that she takes Onslaught pretty well against low strength things. You know, so you don't want her up against leaders and stuff, but even against Toughness 4, basically anything that's not Toughness 5, really, as long as she's not fighting Stormcast, she does pretty respectable damage, especially with Onslaught active. And now that you only pay 130 for her instead of 145, you know, that's 15 points 15 points can be a lot elsewhere in your list. So that could be, I still don't think that she's like amazing, like one of the better units in the game, anything like that. No, like absolutely not. I think she's kind of in a really awkward sort of role spot, but you know, Nighthaunt's kind of really scraping around for playable people, and I think the Banshee's playable.
Yeah. The other one that's in this kind of point range, right, this mid-tier point range, is the Dread Scythe Harridan. And we talked about her a little bit before. She, like the Slasher Crone, has 5 attacks against Strength 3, 1 base, 3 crit damage. So you're really fishing for crits here if you want to do any kind of damage. I don't know, like she's gonna hunt some of your chaff models out there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if you go up against like a Soulblight Gravelords, like she's gonna eat through skeletons, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I played against someone who had both Banshees and Harridans in their list at Adepticon, and they were fine. I ended up winning that game, but I don't know. They were okay. They weren't something that really was scary or impressive, but unlike the Chain Rasps, they at least did things.
I like how you're like, they were fine.
They were not the worst models around that points cost that I played against, right?
Yeah,
I played against someone who unfortunately had actually played against 2 Thunderstrike Stormcast players who had those 145-point spearmen from Dominion. I'd way rather have a Dread Scythe Harridan than one of those spearmen, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah, way more attacks, right?
Right.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so the last two units here, last 2 fighters, are what I consider sort of the elites of Nighthaunt. The first one is the Hex Wraith. It's got a big movement, right, which is kind of nice. It's got a 10-inch movement. It's got 20 wounds on it, and but it only does. It's got 3 attacks, strength 3, 1 and 3 damage, right? So it's okay. I think it gets you. This is a model that I would probably take in my list if I were trying to capture objectives like treasure hunts. Right, this would be my treasure hunt model.
Like if you knew the mission ahead of time and you wanted to make sure all 3 of your deployment groups could go snatch a treasure, and like you've only got 2 leader options, yeah, why not? Why not use a Hex Wraith to go snatch treasures?
I don't know if he's that good elsewhere, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, he's got the same damage profile. In fact, it's a worse damage profile than like a Bladegeist Revenant or Mirmorn Banshee. So, I would rather take one of those if I needed to kill things. You know, so.
Yeah.
The last one, which is actually probably one of my favorite units, is the Spirit Host. We talked about him before. He's got that frightening touch that turns his hits into crits. He has 6 attacks at strength 3, 1 base, 4 crit damage, 30 wounds at toughness 5. He's a beefy guy, and he's really great if you can resurrect him, because he just comes back, and when he does his attacks and you put that frightening touch on, he could really put a hurt on some things. So he has some surprising oomph in his attacks if you can get that triple off.
Yeah, is there any? I'm just looking to see if there's any abilities outside of the Spirit Torment that reduce toughness of enemies or add strength to the Spirit Torment. Um,
The Spirit Torment or the Spirit
or sorry,
Host?
the Spirit Host. I'm just looking for something that removes toughness. I don't think I see it. Um, but keep an eye out if you ever see something that enters the Death Grand Alliance that reduces toughness. Reducing toughness abilities are almost always terrible, but if you could combo it with the Frightful Touch ability, that could be absolutely terrifying.
That'd be amazing, especially like on a toughness 4 or toughness 5 model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's really toughness 4, so that would really be a huge combo. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Overall, how would you rate the Nighthaunt faction, Dan?
Oof.
Like,
So
are they mid tier, bottom tier? I know you've kind
so
of like done your ABCD, right?
yeah,
tiers?
personally, I'd say with the new Tome of Champions stuff and like Red Harvest terrain, stuff like that, nothing with solid 10-inch flying leaders can be like the bottom of the bottom,
Yeah.
right? Because there are some missions where if you have a Knight of Shrouds on Steed and your opponent doesn't have a flyer, you can leverage that to just win just off of that alone, right?
Right.
So you couldn't be bottom of the bottom, but maybe bottom of the middle, or maybe
Okay.
top of the bottom. Somewhere around there, I'd say.
What do you think, Jason? How do you feel about them?
I'm not sure. Like I said, I think an experienced player that's going to take advantage of, and I know I've iterated it, and I'll keep iterating it, plays the movement capability and use those spirit hosts to camp objectives, and then runs around with the speed of their others to kind of poke in the butt or cause havoc of the other player. An experienced player that can do that effectively without blundering, I think, can be effective with this army. And when I say effective, I mean, am I saying that they're going to win all the time? I don't think that's guaranteed with this army, but I think what it will mean is they'll play it in such a way that if their opponent can't make mistakes.
Right.
Because if the opponent, an experienced player that capitalizes on those advantages will make it such that their opponent has to play a very tight game to pull out the win. But I still think that they're a little bit less of a challenge than some of the other warbands that I've played against. Just my opinion.
No, I think you're right. I think part of their problem is most of their models are hitting like a wet noodle, right? Just a base 1 damage for.
That's
your
really it, because even if you
know.
chase me around and try to poke me, it's like you might be poking me with a really soft stick, and I'm just like, that's annoying. Leave it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jason, I love how you put your answer. I can tell you're someone who really respects his opponents, based on what Justin's told me about the spankings you've given him with his Nighthaunt, and the fact that you are still so nice and so a good general can really do some things with movement.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
maybe, but they can't do it to you.
Definitely. That's funny. That's why I started switching it up, and I played my Cruel Boys, and
Yeah, I like Cruel Boys are good.
Yeah, they're surprisingly good. So, all right, we are running a little shy on time, but I still think that we got enough time to get into our last segment here. One of the things that I see all the time, and I get questions about all the time, especially when we're teaching new players how to play, is you say, okay, before we reveal the card, the battle deployment and the mission cards, you need to split your forces into 3 groups: hammer, dagger, shield, right? Or dagger, hammer, shield, however you want to say it. We need to split them into 3 groups, and just remember, like, the rules are obviously that you can't have more than 50% in one group. You have to have at least 1 fighter in one group, and you have to have at least a third of your army in the shield. All right, those are the rules. And we always get the same look from the new players. They look at me like, so where am I supposed to put these models again? Right? They're like, what do I do with this information? Like, I don't, like, how do I strategize? I don't understand how we want to do that. So we thought it would be good to talk a little bit about, planning your battle groups out and knowing maybe some facts and statistics that can help you get there, and then maybe some strategies that you might want to consider as you're putting your battle groups together. So let's start a little bit right now with the breakdown of rounds that like battle groups can appear. So Dan, you've kind of looked at this, I think, a little bit before. I know I put some stats together last night. I actually went through all of the cards, the deployment cards in the original pack. I went through all of the Tome of Champions. I went through the Red Harvest one. And I kind of put some very unscientific math together on, like, when, what are your probabilities that you would, each of these groups, the hammer, the dagger, the shield, would appear in round 1 versus round 2 versus round 3. So I sent these stats over to you, Dan and Jason. Was there anything that popped out to you guys that you thought was interesting or that stood out to you?
Yeah, so that 78% number for, I think that's about what Rito had said a long time ago when he did a similar video to this. Really lets you, if you're only playing the base game, it really lets you stack your shield, and especially most of those deployment cards, not only does the shield come on round 1, but most of the time it comes on like in the thick of the fighting too. So you can really stack your shield with combos if you're playing the base game. When Catacombs came out and then Red Harvest came out and was balanced with deployment, and a lot of people were upset because their combo lists were much jankier now, as opposed to having an 80% success rate. It's more around 50, or maybe a little. It's like 60 or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so back in the day with the base game before any expansions, and still if that's what you're playing, you can really stack your shield and pull off some pretty silly combos that if someone's not expecting it and not stacking their shield, you can really catch them out.
So I broke it down, and let me throw out the numbers real quick, because you mentioned the shield. So the shield will appear in the first round, and like you said, a lot of times right in the thick of the battle, right? Usually 8 inches in from a board edge, kind of like right in the middle. The shield will appear in the first round 78% of the time. And it will appear 21% of the time, almost 22% of the time in the second round, and it will never appear in the third round. The hammer will appear 40% in the first round, 40% in the second round, and about 18% in the third round. Now I'm rounding up. That's why these aren't adding up to 100. But just giving you guys rough ideas. And then the dagger will appear 61% of the time in the first round, 35% of the time in the second round, and 2% in the third round. I think it's important to talk about the core book, because when you look at a lot of the monsters and mercenaries and a lot of the narrative stuff that's even in the Tome of Champions, they'll say use the deployment cards as usual. Use the deployment cards as usual, which is from the first core rule book, essentially, right? So yeah, if you're playing narrative, if you're playing anything really like that, realize that like your shield is on there almost 80% of the time, and your dagger on the first round, and your dagger is on there 62% of the time in the first round. And I think that should tell you a lot about how you may want to think about organizing your battle groups.
Yeah, these are good numbers. I've honestly never thought about it up to this point. Every time I've played with new players, I always say, just balance it, and maybe put some roguish hitters in your dagger, because daggers seem like rogues would be holding daggers. and it's
I
always
think that's
like
some solid narrative play right there.
Exactly,
I like that.
exactly.
I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, and so and to be fair, I don't feel like I've ever played a game where someone has been like, man, I really wish they were on the field right now. I really need them on the field. This sucky deployment's going to keep me from getting. I've never felt like that, and maybe it's because of the stats that you have just thrown out there, where 80% of the time your shield is going to be on in round 1, and 60% of the time your daggers are going to be on in round 1. So it's really just the hammer, which I typically pick as my middle one, that's got a 50-50 shot on whether it's going to come in on the first or the second round. And so I've always kind of balanced my groups out, understanding that one of these is probably going to come in on the second, and the others will probably come in on the first.
And I think that's a good way to do it with the newer stuff. The Red Harvest, I know, is perfectly balanced, and I think everything is 60%. I know in our stats thing, I think you might have included some things that aren't in Red Harvest there, because there's 0 third round stuff in Red Harvest.
Oh, that's weird. I thought I just
and then
their card.
Catacombs is the same. So I think having balanced deployment groups in Red Harvest or Catacombs is probably correct. The other thing in the base game that you can kind of do with the hammer is if you just put a single cavalry or a single flyer or a single fast thing, right? So that you can kind of get to the fight a little easier. That can be good, but sometimes if you try really hard to game it and you get that 20% where your shield's not on the fight round 1, then you've really messed yourself up. So if you don't balance them out, sometimes you can pull one over on your opponent, and sometimes you can get that 1 in 5 time you get punished, you'll really remember it.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Jason, you said I don't think I've ever played a game where I feel like I need those on there. You clearly haven't ever played with orcs. Or Stormcast Eternals.
Yeah.
Where you're just
and
oh
you
my
have the
gosh,
really
I need
slow elite ones. Mm-hmm.
I need that mega boss on there yesterday,
Yeah,
and I put them in the,
That's true. I mean, I've played with ogres though, where I've only got 4 models total.
That's
right?
true. That's
and
true.
So, I think it comes down to probably play style too. But there, I'm sure that I've had a battle plan once or twice where I've needed somebody on there, but he hasn't been there, and I just adjusted the way I played, recognizing that he was going to come in.
Right.
On that, and that's the thing is, I feel like even in those deployment cards that you pull, where you are going to be coming in late, they're on appropriate edges so that it gives it helps. The fact that you're going to be coming in on that edge gives you a little bit of control in that area of the board that your opponent has to watch for, because he knows if he places he can't get away from you by going to that edge, because somebody's going to come in really close to engage on that next round. So I don't know. I've always felt like it's a fun mechanic, not one that I've had to pay extreme attention to, as long as I've balanced out all 3 of those groups. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, this made me think a little bit more, especially if I'm playing with Iron Jaws or something like that. If I'm bringing a mega boss, I'm putting him in my shield. That's just where he's going, and just because he has a greater chance of being on the board the first turn, and even if he is on the second round, that's fine. If had I put him in that hammer, he'd have a greater chance of being on the second turn anyway, or second round anyway. Right, so I think knowing that with the base deployment stuff, I want to be sure that what I put in the shield I really would like on the board first round, and then maybe some of the supporting units, or like you said, Dan, a cavalry or a flyer or something like that coming in in the hammer, just in case. If they get on the board the first round, hey, that's great. But if they come in the second round, that's fine too, because they can just double move and be where they need to be anyway. So
yeah. And even if you're going balanced, sometimes you want to think about abilities. So if there's one fighter that has an ability that buffs up a different fighter, you really want them to be in the same deployment group.
Yeah.
So even if you're balancing it, maybe you don't put them in the shield, but you do want them together.
Yeah. So a good point, Justin. Actually, if you have a heavy hitter that's tough, I think putting him in the shield is probably a better choice because he's going to get on the field. He's going to have more rounds to contribute to the fight. But if you got a heavy hitter that is a glass cannon, it might be better to have him in the hammer so that the field can mature a little bit, and then he can come in later and start, firing like crazy.
Yeah. No,
but he
I
doesn't
think
get
that's
blown off the field right on the first round.
Right. I think that's a great point. Dan, I think that you had a great point in our on our Iron Jaws webpage, our WARCRY webpage. You talked about how you want to use WOG, that WOG ability as early as you can with like a Mega Boss or a Brute Boss or something like that can use that WOG ability. You want to use that as early as you can to get the Iron Jaws where they need to be. And then you kind of said also, like, if you're going to bring a Gore-Grunta that has good movement, like, you don't need him in the same battle group because he doesn't have to benefit from the WOG like maybe some of the Ard boys do. Right?
Yeah, and it's why for Iron Jaws I actually think, so their best leader is the leader on Gore-Grunta, and I actually think it's a bit of a trap because it's really hard to fit that and a second Gore-Grunta into a list, so then all of a sudden your mobility is on Wah and on your leader who has Wah anyway, and so you actually have less mobility when your leader is on the pig, even though it's the best leader in Iron Jaws. It's this weird trap that you kind of, it's not a disaster if you do it. I mean, if you love your Gore-Grunta leader, it is the best stat leader in the faction, but I do think it's less competitive than having a different on foot leader using WOG and then having a Gore-Grunta elsewhere to give you some movement outside of the WA.
Right.
Yeah. One last thing. So we've talked about the base game and how we can change that. I did some research a while ago for the Tome of Champions missions when I was doing Adepticon tournament review stuff. That's really interesting because so all of them you're equally likely, it's 50-50 shot with each deployment group whether or not you'll be on the field round one, which seems like the best thing there is to have balanced deployment groups, and that is true, but because there's only 6 missions, you kind of want to play the specific missions too, and so sometimes it's worth it to think about, if you have the option, how would you balance them while staying fairly balanced on points, right? So the shield is right in the thick of things for both of the objective missions, and so you kind of want like extra chaff in your shield, because Fleeting Glory and Nexus of Power are both objective missions where you just want to outnumber them, and so your shield starts right in the middle. You want to have extra chaff so you can outnumber people on objectives starting right away in round one. And then your dagger, in the ones where it starts, it's like trophy kills where you start 18 inches away, but you have to get a kill round one, or at least if you do, you probably win. And, or scour where dagger starts all the way in the back. So if you have something really fast, or if you have archers, they're really good in your dagger over everything else. And then your hammer, it's in ones where when it starts in the thick of things, you have you're basically just fighting your opponent. So the hammer can be a really good spot if you've just got like a really beefy fighter, like a Doom Bull or something, or a Kurnoth Hunter. So it's strange where they're really balanced, so you can get away with just balancing your warbands and not worrying about the strategy, and you won't get punished that hard. But also, because there's sort of so few missions and they're so specific, you can be kind of rewarded for sort of playing to the specific missions there.
Very good. And with a lot of these, with a lot of those, they come in the tournament, right? Which, as I was looking at the tournament pack, you need to, when you submit your list, you are also submitting your battle groups there. So you aren't able to change your battle groups before each mission set, before each game that you have. the battle groups that you have, or the battle groups that you have for the whole tournament. But you can still do that where you're like, hey, listen, like the shield, when it's on there, like it's in the thick of things, I need some endurance there, or chaff, right, or something like that.
Or yeah, because you want
yeah.
numbers in your shield. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I kind of learned this. I built my warband for Adepticon not knowing whether to expect TOC missions or base game missions, so I kind of did something halfway in between. And so my dagger would have been better as my hammer, and my hammer as my dagger, right?
Okay.
So, it's something that I definitely studied pretty hard after the tournament, because it was, a very small mistake. I don't think it made the difference in any games, but it would have made some things a lot better. Yeah, there was a game I only won by 1 point where I think I would have won much more comfortably, etc. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So, this is I love this aspect of the game of having to, like, break them up, and you've got your deployments and stuff like that. And for narrative, like, it's a lot of fun. But I think as we look at WARCRY becoming more and more competitive, I think that these battle groups are going to become more and more important as people think through them and through the specific missions that are in the mission packs, right? Of how to preset themselves up. And I think that will actually begin to show, like, the great players from just the good players, right? It'll kind of separate that as a way of, truly understanding the game.
Yeah, definitely. The interview I did with Kyle Hall, who won the Adepticon, the larger of the two Adepticon competitive tournaments. He had thought pretty darn hard about how he was going to, weight his battle groups, and he specifically took exactly 3 tree revenants so that he could have 1 in each, and then no more, because he didn't want more than 1 in a deployment group. It's stuff like that, which I thought was really interesting. But as WARCRY becomes more competitive, I think it'll also become more narrative, right? There will be more narrative events, and I actually wasn't joking when I said that, like, putting rogues in your dagger sounded kind of fun and cool. I mean, for narrative events, I think that's sweet. I actually think that that's a really legit way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
And put your heavy hitters in those hammers, right?
Yep.
Yeah, let's do it. So, hopefully that helps you, our audience, understand the 3 deployment groups a little bit more. I'm personally grateful to be, like, have gone through, like, all of the cards and looking at all of the different options and being like, oh wow, that pops up a lot more than I thought, because it really made me think about this when I had not really thought about gaming my battle group list. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm at the table, sure, 3 groups, and now I think I'm going to think through it a little bit more carefully, especially when you're playing with a group like maybe a Nighthaunt, right? That that you really need to play your best game to be able to win some games with a faction like Nighthaunt. And if you can begin it in the battle groups, maybe you'll give yourself a competitive edge. So hopefully this helps you guys. We would love some feedback. If you got something from this, let us know. Again, we've got our Facebook page. We have our Twitter account, Tabletop and Beyond podcast. We would love to hear from you. And if you've got suggestions for future warband faction deep dives, just let us know. There's obviously a ton out there, and we love going through each of these because it's really cool to find out what's good and what's maybe not so good in each of these factions. So until then, keep the dice rolling, and as Dan says, right, may all your hits be crits. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, I do sign off with that. May all your rolls be crits.
There you go. That's your signature move. I'm not going to steal it from you. It's good stuff. So anyway, keep the dice rolling, everybody. We love it, and thanks for supporting us. Have a great night.
See ya.